Hello, dear perceptive souls. This is Bevin, and I'm coming to you today to process a lot of the things that are happening in our world right now. There's so much as we've gone into this year, 2020, that we just never could have expected. And we look at all of it and we work to take it in. We attempt to make sense of illness and discrimination and violence and all the things that we are facing in the world right now. Let's just take a moment to breathe and bring ourselves back momentarily into this space, into our bodies. As we set a powerful intention for individual and collective healing, as we hold space for all people of color who have been oppressed and hurt and killed throughout the ages, simply for the color of their skin. We have a lot of learning to do, my friends. More so, a lot of unlearning to do. Because what came out in the cards tonight is a story of hope, but deep introspection, and our need to take very strong responsibility for the world that we are co-creating together. So we see that the King of Air came out. This is the masculine energy, of course, and the very intellectual, logical. A king can be very compassionate, rule his kingdom in a way that benefits everyone. And yet, throughout history, many kings have been very oppressive to their people, gathering all of the resources and the wealth of the kingdom in their own coffers, while the people in their communities struggled, starved, experienced illness. And so much of this unhealthy, toxic masculine has been our normal. I know it's been my normal since I was born onto this planet in this lifetime. And it has been our normal for thousands and thousands of years. And again, this is not about men, making men bad. We all have the masculine energy within. We all have the feminine energy within. We're talking about a collective energy that honors more so the intellectual mind, that honors more so the power over others. It says that whoever's on top gets all of the spoils and everyone underneath can just deal with it, right? Can just deal with it, can scrape by and work to make that happen. And this has been that energy. And in the feminine, we've also had this toxic feminine, right? And again, I'm not talking about women, I'm talking about our relationship with the earth, our relationship with each other, our relationship with in our communities, right? So this is the gatherer, which ideally would be that we harvest in the fall and we share that with everyone in the space and in the community. But look at her. Look at the tears that are falling. Look at how her hands are bound up. This is what we've done to our Earth Mother. This is what we've done to each other. This is what women have experienced. Right? There's a great harvest there. There's an invitation for us to tap into our intuition, to tap into this knowing, and yet that's not where we've been. And the 5 of earth came up next, which tells us like this person has all this opulence, right? Look at the jewels. Yeah, she has all of this opulence. But at what cost to this person behind? Right? It's like gambling with someone else's future. We're gambling with our children and grandchildren's future by how much we're taking from the earth. Those who are at the top, the 1%, the 3% who have all of this opulence and wealth and live these ostentatious lifestyles are gambling with everyone else's future and way of life. And this is where we've been, but this card came upside down, which says, no longer are we going to live this way. This is not the way we are meant to be. And so at this particular time, we descend into the lower world. And in shamanic terms, the lower world is where we go to really get into the shadow. This is no longer like sitting up in the middle world and pretending like everything's great and sitting on our iPhones and just, being in this superficial 3D reality. This is getting down into the dregs, down into the darkness, ripping up the scab, going, hell no, no more peace until things change. This is where we find ourselves, and the lower world is not comfortable for anyone. I mean, does anyone really like to look at their shadow? And so we're looking at our individual shadows, we're looking at our collective shadows. We're looking at how in the world can we as cognizant, conscious, spiritual beings allow these atrocities to go on. And we say no more. But we have to take this journey into this lower world. And I see people online saying, well, I can't believe that people are destroying property. Really? Because what happens is our system is destroying lives, right? Destroying lives. Snuffing out a person's divine spark. That's what's actually happening. So we need to move beyond this focus on the material of our love for things and begin to take our power back, right? This is the power awakening. You see this puma, it's fierce. It looks right into the situation and it has this awakening. It's like, no. I'm going to bring my claws out. I'm going to bring my teeth out. And I'm going to become the predator. And you see this happening all over the world with those who are rioting and protesting because, damn, like, if you have been oppressed your whole life, what do you do with all that rage? What do you do with that rage when you watch members of your community be killed in the street? What do you do with that? You become the puma. You become the predator then. Because you've been the prey for too long. And what you do is you take the blade and you start slicing and dicing and cutting. And the blade is a powerful weapon. It gets right to the heart of it. And when you see a person take a trash can and smash it through the window of an elite store with jewelry and all these opulent things, and they take that stuff and they throw it out into the street, it's like, enough. Enough with our focus, with our mentality on the materialism, with our consumerism, with the idea that it's survival of the fittest. You want to see survival of the fittest? We're going to show you. We're going to hit right where it hurts. Right? We're going to hit right where it hurts. We're going to start speaking the truth. I've seen so many Black activists on YouTube and on TV just, they're not pulling punches anymore, my friends. And I, although I do not share their experience, I am not pulling punches either. I'm going to use the blade and I'm going to speak the truth and I'm going to be the best ally that I know how to be, and I'm going to learn and I'm going to research. And I'm going to speak up inside of my communities and in public about the way that we need to shift and change our world. And what came out next was the smoky mirror, but this came out in reverse, which is all about clearing up this fogginess. Oh no, we see exactly what's happening now. And we're not having it. We've tried asking for a better world. We've tried praying for a better world. We've tried negotiating. We've tried legal action. We've tried all kinds of things, and our country is led. I mean, I'm not even going to say led, because he's not a leader of our country. Our country is headed up by someone who pretends to be incompetent, but he knows very damn well what he's doing. He's inciting all of this. And right now we just don't have a vision other than to be the Puma, to stop being the prey, to say hell no, no more. But we don't have a vision for what's next. We don't know because we moved out of that really intellectual place and into the lower world. This is where we are right now. We're there emotionally, and you know, it's not time yet to create that vision. All of this anguish and pain and multi-generational abuse that people of color, that indigenous people, that our earth has endured, that rage has to go somewhere. It needs an outlet. So I suggest that if you find yourself wanting to say, I don't know why people are rioting, really? Think about that for a moment. Just think about it for a moment. Maybe you don't really know. In which case you should say, I don't understand the rage, but I accept that the rage is okay, that the rage is necessary. And I hold a sacred container for that. Because this is really about us having faith. You know, this is the card where we're tapping into our higher self, and we will get there. We will get there. And this is a slow process, right? This has been a slow process. You know, over time, different groups across the world slowly started to gain more and more rights. But this has been a very slow process. And we're kind of like, you know, we're ready for that to be accelerated. We're ready. The crane, as a spirit animal, is a predator that stands very quietly and looks into the water, just almost motionless. And when the fish comes closer and closer, it takes its advantage because it needs to survive. Not because it's a fish that wants to subjugate or, you know, this crane is not trying to take more fish than it needs. It's only taking what it needs. But it stands very still and very quiet. And we've had a lot of that too. And I wrote about this recently to my email subscribers, that as a white woman, I have often been silent when I have seen Black and brown people gunned down in the street, suffering. And I'm not going to be silent anymore. I'm not going to be silent anymore. Eventually, we will come into an emotional new beginning. We'll start to see and have a glimmer of hope. We have to go through all of this first. And there may be waves of this, you know, grieving, expressing the rage and the anger and the pain of all of these years of subjugation. It's going to take a while before we kind of get into this space where we're able to get back into that logical mind. And that's okay. It's going to take whatever process it needs to take. But there is a new beginning. There is a place where we can have faith and hope. And then we see the Seven of Air, which doesn't bring us into that very cold, detached mental state. This is about learning, researching, writing new laws, creating new intention. This is about spiritual growth. It is time for us to evolve beyond the focus on the material and into that which is vitally, vitally important for all human beings. Equality of life and equity. Every person on earth has access to clean water, enough food to eat every day, a safe shelter, a sense of belonging in their community, a way for them to meaningfully serve and use their gifts. This is this vision that we're starting to create. We're still a little bit blind about that, right? We don't know exactly how that goes, but we are holding space for that intention. And we've got a lot of work to do to not repeat the past. Because what comes next is the death and the rebirth. This is the old paradigm, which has been built on the lives, whether you talk about those who slaved in the African diamond mines so that people in developed countries can wear a beautiful diamond ring on their hand, or you talk about children who labor in factories so that we can have cheap clothing, whether you talk about the oil and gas industry, which is sucking literally the lifeblood out of our world and is halting our ability to create sustainable energy. This is that old paradigm, right? This is that old paradigm which tells us that somehow we thought that it was okay for one human being to own another human being, to sell another human being. You know, we have some ways to go. And this time period that we find ourselves in is the shedding of our old skin. And it's a very uncomfortable shedding. It's not like it just falls off in one piece. We're like, I'm this brand new, shiny snake, right? You have to itch it and scratch it, and it grows back in patches. And then eventually over time, we have this rebirth. This rebirth. It's a rebirth in consciousness. It's a rebirth in our societal structures. All of the ways that we set things up for other people. And the next two cards that came out was the Mother and the Queen of Earth. This is pretty clear that we need to learn how to nurture the divine feminine, the part of ourselves that has empathy and caring for each other. I watched as car after car after car drove past a homeless man on the street yesterday. And he had a sign that he was trying to work himself out of poverty. And I looked in my wallet, and I don't generally carry cash very much. And all I had was $1. And a part of me said, you know, you should just put that back in your wallet. Like, that's not going to help anyone. Because what is $1 going to do for him? But I rolled down my window and I said, I'm so sorry. This is all the cash that I have. And he was so appreciative. And this is where the people in our world have been, and we need to embody these energies where we realize that we're all a part of an ecosystem. He's not separate from me. He is me. He is another spiritual being, just like I am. George Floyd is not separate. He is us. And this is a different way of relating in the world. This is a way of relating in love. Right? You see the buffalo. I mean, the buffalo spirit is calling us to remember that when we came to the United States as settlers, they killed indiscriminately so many of these beautiful creatures. They're strong and they roam the prairies and they had a collective herd, and there's just so many amazing aspects to the buffalo spirit. This is a reminder that we can either honor this abundance, this beautiful planet that we've been given, that we are stewards of, our fellow human beings that we are stewards of. We have done so much killing for so many years as human beings. It is time for us to move into a new energy, to begin to birth a new cycle. You see here, the beginnings of new life. And Turquoise Changing Woman says that we need to have a higher vision. We need to take this falcon energy. We need to lift up. We need to lift up above our individual lives. We need to be able to see out into the future and envision and hold a world and each other in a space that isn't just all about the now. It's about creating a future for generations to come. We are building a foundation, my friends. And those of you who are out there who are empaths and lightworkers and mystics and spiritual seekers and whatever label that you give yourself or don't give yourself, those who care so deeply about what happens next, it is time to stand up and take back your power from within and band together with so many others who are in this energy. The two is about partnership, connection, upliftment, being in right relationship with yourself, doing your own inner work, whatever that looks like, looking at your own shadow, going into your own lower world, creating your own death and rebirth cycle, and then doing that in the collective as well, because whatever happens within ripples into the outward. And if what we've been creating within is all about what Netflix show I'm watching, and it's not that there's anything wrong with that per se. Sometimes we need to just chill, right? It's time. It's time to step into this leadership and to listen to Indigenous peoples and people of color. Listen to and honor their experiences. Ask, how can I help? What do you need? Instead of us leading, instead of us saying, I know how to do this. I'm going to fix you. I'm going to save you. I'm going to make it better. How can I serve? And what can I do? And the final card asks us to stand in the light. Each of us has a divine spark within. This is our spiritual inheritance. This is our eternal self. And so, yes, on some higher level, there is all of this that's happening right now is part of what I believe is a grand plan. And I imagine that any sentient civilizations, and I don't believe that we're the only ones out there in the entire universes, go through different patterns. Maybe everyone goes through a agricultural age and a pre-industrial age and then an age of technology. And now, my friends, we are coming into the age of consciousness. What consciousness do we want to embody? What consciousness we want to embody? This is the fullness of the moon. This is the completion of an old cycle and the rising into a new cycle. And it begins within. It begins within you, and it begins within me. It begins within the organizations and communities that we support through our time, our volunteerism, our money. It begins with how we do business with each other in a conscious way. It begins by one person at a time, recreating from the bottom up a new structure, a new system, a new society, and creating a world that works for everyone. So I thank you for being here with me today. There is hope, and right now we don't have a great vision for what this looks like, but there is new life coming, and we have the power to be conscious creators. So I invite you to join me and all of the others in making this happen. Please take care of yourself at this time. You need even more self-care as a sensitive soul than any time before. And then go out there and do one small thing and another small thing. Shine your light. Work on your own shadow. Heal. Release. Be an ally. Now is the time. This is why we came here. This is the threshold, the shift, the death and rebirth of the collective global consciousness on planet Earth. Namaste.